Hi. Hi, guys. It's me again, Paul. It's crazy. You guys come here every week at the same time. I like it. I'm back here in my prison shack, and I think it's my last week here, writing to the Philippians. And I've just been going around and writing more encouraging words to them. You know, they need a lot of encouragement. But I'm at the point where I can send my letter to them, and I really, really want to hear back from them. I've just been concluding by encouraging them not to fight with one another or disagree over small things. God doesn't want his children to have grudges. They need to remember that each of their names are written in the book of life. Jesus has redeemed them. The key, I've written, is praying. Taking every worry and concern to Christ. It's wonderful what happens when Christ is at the center. Even me, stuck here in prison, I'm far happier here with God than I was ever with my wealthy family. I actually don't have the sense to need anything. I've learned by now to be quite content, whatever my circumstance. Well, that's it for me. Paul, signing off. May the grace of God be with you all.
Good morning, everyone. Thought I'd just bring a snack in case I got hungry. Hope you guys don't mind. Anyone a fan of KFC? Hemi, you want to come get a piece? Come on. All right. Can you guys smell that? Awesome. Enjoy it. Who's had KFC before? Well, I actually haven't because I'm a vegetarian, but that's okay. Everybody loves KFC, and do you know that KFC, how it all started, is quite a cool story. So, KFC stands for Kentucky Fried Chicken. So there was this guy back in 1930, his name was Mr. Sanders, and he had a gas station in Kentucky, and in his little gas station, he started cooking fried chicken on the side and selling it to people. And it got so popular that he closed down his gas station and he built a restaurant in its place. So here he had this gas station and everyone started calling him, oh yeah, the chicken man, that guy makes good chicken. So he made this awesome restaurant, and then he realized he had a problem. His chicken got so popular that his customers were getting mad at him because by the time he fried that chicken in a pan, it took half an hour for each meal. So he had this queue and he's like, okay, I need to do something. So then he invested in the French frying technique and he started deep frying his chicken. So he's deep frying the chicken and his customers were like, it's not as good as it used to be. And he started losing a few, so he was freaking out a little bit. He's like, what should I do? The chicken was cooking faster, but it was kind of dry and it wasn't as good. So then he went and he kept investigating. He was always trying different flavors at the same time. And the last thing he did was he actually got a pressure cooker. So KFC pressure cook their chicken, and they can make it in 9 minutes, and it comes out exactly how he wanted. It's tender, it's cooked evenly, it's crispy, and then he adds the secret ingredient. And do you know that there's 11 herbs and spices that go into the outside of this KFC? He cooks it in what he has perfected, the Colonel's secret recipe. And do you know that it's so secret that he even gets 5 ingredients of the herbs and spices mixed in one place and the other 6 mixed in another factory somewhere on the complete opposite side of America, just so that nobody knows what the 11 are. And then a machine mixes the two together. And there's only one person in the world that knows the whole ingredients. And he got interviewed one time and they said, hey, tell us what's in the secret ingredient. So he told them, okay, there's salt, there's pepper, and then everything else you'll find on your spice rack at home. So nobody really knows. And now, in the KFC headquarters, 66 years later, KFCs in countries all around the world. It's even in Kaitaia, which is the very top town of New Zealand. And in Kaitaia, I used to live there, there's no mall, there's no movie theatre, there's no Tempin bowling, there's no other fast food joints, but there's KFC. So that says something. People love this stuff. So now in the KFC headquarters, all the way over in Kentucky, there's this vault in the office. And apparently it's been said that it looks like a broom closet. And it's nothing spectacular. It's not a golden doors or anything. But inside that vault is the secret ingredients in the recipe for KFC. It's pretty crazy, right? A lot of secrecy went into it. But can you imagine if you had a secret that was even more important than just herbs and spices for chicken? What lengths people would go through to keep it. They're so secretive about their recipe. And today I want to share with you guys about a secret recipe that isn't being kept secret and locked away in a vault. Have you guys ever thought you had the secret recipe and the best ingredients of something awesome, something better than 11 spices for something that you thought was life-changing? My mum makes some pretty life-changing meals, and she is a great cook. And I thought, you know what? I don't live at home anymore, but my favorite meal that she makes, there's mashed potato and gravy, then there's minted baby peas, and then there's a Greek salad, and then there's these things she calls Glamorgan sausages. They are so good, and I thought, you know what? The secret ingredients in this thing can't be that bad because I've had this meal so many times, so I'm going to recreate it myself. So I got all the ingredients. I put in cottage cheese, grated cheese, egg, breadcrumbs, garlic, onions, some herbs and spices, and then I rolled them into these little balls, these patties, and then I rolled it in raw egg, and then I rolled it in breadcrumbs, and then I put it in the fridge for a little while to sit, so it'd stick together. And then I fried them in a frying pan with just the right amount of oil and on the right temperature and in a non-stick pan. And guess what I came out with? A disaster. They were burnt, they were flat, they tasted like stuffing and nothing like my mum's amazing secret recipe. And I was really sad about it. I was hoping to have this amazing thing, but it just didn't turn out that way. And I just thought, you know what, I can't do this. I even asked my mum for the recipe, and I still couldn't do this. And I just said, I can't, that's it. I got frustrated about it. Maybe you guys have said those words, I can't. Maybe you've said them recently, and I'm sure it's for things much bigger than cooking your favorite meal. Maybe you guys have been saying, I can't do this, and it's for something much bigger, like I can't fix this relationship or this marriage, or I can't get over this addiction. Maybe I can't get on top of my finances and my debt's just overwhelming me. Maybe I can't handle being alone anymore, or I can't do this and be a parent. I'm not cut out for this and I just can't. Those words, I can't, can just really rob our joy. But the good news is that today I want to tell you guys that Paul says you can, and he's giving us a secret recipe with the secret ingredients of how to be joyful. Sound good? All right. So, over the last few weeks, we've been going through this joyful series. And in our joyful series, we've been looking at a letter from Paul, and he writes it to this group called the Philippians in Philippi. And so, Paul, in case you've missed it and you guys don't really know who he is, he's got no reason at all to be joyful. His context is he's in prison. We heard from him just before. So he's in prison. Things aren't going so great for him. In fact, he used to have this pretty awesome life, and he used to be wealthy and have all these things and be well-known and have a good reputation. And then, next thing you know, he starts following God, and trouble just comes from everywhere for him. And he gets thrown in prison, and I think it's pretty unjustly, and it was just because he was spreading the good news of God. And next thing, he's in prison and everything's going bad for him, and it's kind of like his story could be a movie because he's this man that goes from here to down in the dumps, but somewhere along the way, he never loses this joy thing. And so I think we can learn a lot from him, and we have in the last few weeks, but today there's even more that he wants to share with us. And if I was in Paul's situation, I think I definitely wouldn't be as joyful. Like, my situation's nowhere near as bad as his. I'm not in prison, I'm not by myself and alone, I haven't been mistreated, but I find myself, I'm not always joyful. I don't know about you guys, but I start worrying about things and I think, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? What about my future? What about my finances? What about my health? I start stressing about things and then I'm actually just worrying about the fact that I'm worrying too much. And then I start unraveling from there, and it's just, I find myself so stressed out and frustrated and just saying, I can't do this. And I think that's a natural response to when things are overwhelming and out of our control, right? We just say, I can't do this anymore. When we find ourselves worrying about worrying, this is where we get to the point where actually Paul's got the ingredients. So I just want to recap our last few weeks. This is the final one of our 4 chapters in Philippians. And first we spoke about the infectious joy. Jordan spoke to us about making our joy so infectious that it ripple effects out, and other people, they're like, hey, I want what you got. That looks pretty good, like this KFC. And then also the next week we spoke about your attitude and having the attitude of humility and having an attitude that's like Christ. And when we follow the same attitude that Christ has, this ripple effect happens where we bring other people joy, and in turn we get joy as well. And then last week we spoke about focusing on the goal, and it was always about looking forward in our life and not looking back at the things that are going to bring us down and rob our joy, but looking forward at what God has planned for us. So in this chapter, in chapter 4, the last of his book, Paul shares the secret ingredients to a joyful life. So if you haven't been with us over the last 4 weeks, that's okay, because we're stoked you're here today, and today you get the secret ingredients and you'll walk away with how to have this joyful life anyway. So Paul starts it off the same as he started off last week, and he's actually mentioned it 3 times so far in his book, and he says, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. You know, he said it 3 times, so I think it must be pretty important, but yet the people were still getting it wrong, and I think we're still getting it wrong today, because we're not always rejoicing in the Lord. We're rejoicing in other things, like, hey, when I get this, then I'll be happy, or if only this would happen, then I'll rejoice. But he's saying, don't rejoice in any of those things. Those aren't the ingredients. Rejoice in the Lord always. So that's the first part. And then I think, much like my mum's home-cooked meal, often we think our secret ingredients in our secret recipe, we're missing a few things. And we're only missing those things when we try to do things our own way and with our own ideas and relying on our own strength. We can often end up just frustrated and saying that I can't do this, but don't give up, because Paul says that there's value in these trials. So when you're going through a frustrating time and you just think, man, I don't even know what the point of this is, that's actually when we allow space for God to work in our lives. So don't give up, be encouraged, because we can find encouragement in Paul when he says, all that you need now is to allow space for me to move in your life. So I want to start off in verse 6 today, where Paul kicks it off and he says, do not be anxious about anything, but pray. Instead, pray. Have any of you guys been given that kind of advice before? You're just like, oh, cool, yeah, thanks. I never actually thought of that myself. I haven't been praying all year or anything, so great. I'm so glad you're so wise and you've given me this advice just to pray. You're so religious. It's awesome. I'm going to write that down and remember it next time. It sometimes feels so frustrating when you get given this cliche. You've just told someone, my whole life is falling apart pretty much. And they say, just pray. You just feel like, what? I just want to be not so spiritual. But you know what? the good news is he doesn't actually leave it there. The verse continues and he says, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Why do you think, if God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and he knows everything, why do we have to even present our requests to God? Doesn't he already know it anyway? I thought about that and I thought, you know what, there's actually a plan in his process. Because when you bring things to God and you have that conversation with him and you speak to him, it's then when he starts working through you. And in that conversation you're having with him, he begins to work in you. You know, God's not a magical genie. And this is something you got to learn pretty soon. You think, you know, I'll ask God for this and he'll give me that. And it doesn't actually work out like that at all. In fact, in my own faith journey, I mean, I've been praying about things for years that I still don't have the answers to. And it doesn't mean that God's not there or he's not real. It's just he actually knows what we need, not what we think we need. So in this verse that we've just read, Paul says, hey, here's the secret ingredients, and I have a few things for the recipe of your life and your recipe for joy. So the first is prayer. And he's not just talking about the sort of prayer where you're like, dear God, thank you for the food, or please God, help me find my keys. He's talking about the real type of prayer that is something that in every situation we can turn to him. So that's in your work life, in your home life, in your finances, in your relationships, whatever it is, it's something that he says in every situation, turn to me. And do it, then he says, he continues on and he says, and do it from a thankful heart. And that kind of makes no sense, because if you are asking God for something and you're really pouring it out to him, how can you have a thankful heart already? But he's saying, you know, reflect back on the times when God's already provided for you and when God's already been there for you so much in the past, and have confidence and be thankful that you know that he's going to look after you in this request as well. And it might not be in the way you think it should be, but it'll be in the way that he wants it to be for you, and that's always the best. You know, Jesus really wants to meet our whole needs and our whole heart and our whole desires. He doesn't want just those prayers that's help me to have a good day today, or thank you for this or that. He wants us to just put all our cards on the table and be like, look, this is it. This is the mess I'm in. This is what's really going on in my life. This is the stress I'm feeling. This is the thing that's just overwhelming me so much that I'm just saying, I can't do this. He says, hey, just put all your cards on the table and let me handle it. But unless you do that, and if you're keeping your cards to yourself, he's not going to come in and work the way you would love him to. And I want you to be encouraged that even if you don't really know if you believe in God or this whole thing's kind of new to you, if you want to get out of your situation and you've tried everything on your own strength and you feel like you can't do it anymore, this is still for you, because God offers you the exact same thing whether you believe in him or not. And if you've tried everything your own way, you've got nothing to lose by just having that conversation with God and just putting it in his hands, because I promise you it's much better than trying it on your own, and that same gift is there for you as it is for everyone else. And I love the way in that verse Paul says, present your request to God. It's kind of like he's saying, you know, reveal to him what's actually going on. Just uncover the problem. Don't just give him the surface stuff. Just show him the whole thing and really just present it to him in its full ugliness, whatever mess it's in. C.S. Lewis has a quote and he says, prayer isn't about changing God's mind, it's about changing me. And the whole thing of prayer is, it's a conversation with God, and it's not about, you know, trying to twist God's arm and trying to convince him why you need this thing. It's actually about having that conversation with God, that over time and what's going on and what you're saying to him, it begins to change you and the way you think and your thoughts as well. And eventually it allows you to get to the point where you think, yeah, I can do this, because you've got that connection with God. So that's the first ingredient. And the second ingredient, you still with me? Yes, great. The second ingredient, Paul continues on and he says that the second ingredient in this recipe is the peace of God. And he continues on in verse 7 and he says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ." To guard your hearts and your mind really means to guard and stand watch. How would you love to have the creator of the whole universe, the one who created you and knows you best, the one who's all-powerful and in complete control, to stand guard of your heart and your mind? It'd be pretty amazing. And if you don't believe in God and you don't really think that's true, how would you like it if anybody who had their best interest in mind for you would guard your heart and your mind? Because that's what he offers all of us. This doesn't mean that if you have God guarding your heart and your mind, it doesn't mean that you won't experience any pain, and it doesn't mean that everything's going to be butterflies and kisses from now on, because it doesn't mean that. You'll still experience pain and you'll still deal with difficult people, but God is guarding your hearts and your mind every single day. It's a renewed thing, and he has your best intentions in mind as well. Can you imagine if we put this verse into practice and if we had that peace from God which transcends all understanding? A peace that you never even thought was possible and you can't get from anywhere else. Actually, we can't imagine it because he already says it's beyond what you can imagine. But let me direct your thoughts, God says, and let me hold your heart in my hand. And that's better than a peace you're going to get from anywhere else. All the other ingredients where we try to do things our own way, God's got something even 1,000 times better than that, a peace which is just going to be mind-blowing and offer you comfort that you've never experienced anywhere else, and he's offering it to you. He's fully equipped to guard your heart, so why wouldn't you trust him with it? And then he hits it home. Verse 13, Paul says, this last secret ingredient, and that is Christ. He says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, a lot of people quote that verse all the time when they're about to do something crazy like skydiving or whatever, or just your exams at uni, and you're saying, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's awesome. And your mind might run wild and think, I'm going to do this now and this, but that's actually not what it means. And I think this is where we get into a bit of trouble often, because our theology of what that verse means and our Disneyology get a little confused. And this is where we often believe, like Disney, that if I'm just good enough and I can do everything, if I use those magical words and I have great manners, and things are going to turn out like a fairy tale ending because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's when Paul's like, whoa, 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 press pause on your Disney movie. This isn't what it means at all. Paul tells us that it actually just means when you say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, he's actually saying you can endure all things that come your way because even in tough circumstances, Christ is on your side. He's saying, I can endure, it means to you, I can endure this tough time I'm going through in this relationship, or I can endure that at the moment I don't have a job and I'm struggling, or I can endure this health thing and God's got things under control no matter what happens. And it's just, he's not a magical genie here. He's just saying, hey, you know what? No matter what you go through in your life, I'm not going to allow anything else to happen that, I'm with you and you can endure it because my strength is made best in your weakness. These three ingredients, everyone's like, yeah, I've heard of these before. That's cool. That's nothing new. And that's true. You have heard of these. They're throughout the Bible everywhere. But this whole chapter that we just looked at, Philippians, is just packed with so much good stuff that when I got told, oh, you're going to speak on Philippians 4, I was like, whoa, because there is just hundreds of good instructions and points in that chapter that it's actually so hard to just brief over it now. And I really want to encourage you guys, go home and read this whole chapter. It's not long. Reread it if you've read it. Just keep putting it into your life because it's actually that good. In fact, this chapter, Philippians 4, and this verse that I've just read to you, it actually means so much to me because quite a few years ago, I went through such a tough time and I experienced some crazy stuff, and Some things I saw I couldn't unsee, and I began to have nightmares all the time. I had nightmares for over a year, and I was like a fully grown adult. I was like, this isn't supposed to be happening anymore. I thought I'd grow out of all this sort of thing. And so I was having these nightmares all the time, and I tried everything in my own strength, as you all do. So I had sleeping pills, and that wasn't good. And then I tried playing beach sounds when I'd sleep, or the fan going around. I'd try soft music. I tried incense. I tried rearranging my room for feng shui, because that's a thing apparently. Found it on Google. I tried all different kinds of things. I'd even go to the gym and go running so late at night that my body was just exhausted and it was just craving to sleep. But it didn't work, and I'd have these same nightmares all the time. And I was like, you know what? Something's got to stop here, because I just can't do this anymore. And I was chatting to a mentor of mine, and he actually he gave me this verse that I've just read with you guys. And I wrote it down on a piece of paper with just a pencil, and I had that scrap piece of paper, and I really read into what that actually means to have a peace of God that transcends all understanding. And I realized, wow, what a mind-blowing thing this is. This peace that God can offer. You know, I thought I had peace when I'd be just relaxing on the beach or something like that, but this peace was something else. So I wrote that verse down, and I stuck it beside my bed, and I'd say it every night. And if I woke up in the night having another nightmare, I'd say the same verse. I'd say it that day before I went to work or whatever it was. Then I went traveling around Europe, and I took that same little scrap piece of paper. Then I went to summer camp in America, and I blue tacked that piece of paper onto my bunk, and everyone else was like, what's that? And I was like, let me tell you. This is amazing. So I would take it, and I've still got that piece of paper with faded pencil. It's been in 3 different flats halfway around the world, and it's still stuck next to the bookshelf next to my bed, and I still say that same verse. That's how much it means, not just to me, but that's how much it can mean to you guys as well, because there's powerful stuff in there, and there's a peace we can't even just talk about here. It's an amazing thing, and you got to experience it to fully be able to understand it. And I just want to encourage you guys, go and read this verse for yourself. Read this chapter afterwards as well, because it's powerful stuff, and it's a secret recipe that we can all apply in our lives. Anyway, that was a side note. So the next time you're saying, I can't, and you're in this situation where you're just like, man, I give up. I've tried everything on my own. Paul instructs us in the next part of the letter, and he says, now, whatever you have heard from me, whatever you have learnt from me, put it into practice. Then you will receive this crazy, mind-blowing, ginormous magnitude of comforting peace. And this peace that I give, the world cannot give. Really bring your struggles and your requests to God in prayer, and let him act on them. Have a conversation with him and be real. Then ask him to guard your heart, and invite him to be the one who stands there protecting your heart and your mind, who gets rid of all the negative thoughts and whatever else is going on. Really experience his peace and begin to trust in it as you trust in him. Allow him to be larger than your life circumstances, and you'll be amazed at the comfort he has to offer you. Let this peace be the center and the very foundation of the decisions you make, of the foundations that you have underneath, no matter what circumstances is going on around your life, what situations you're in, that you can have this unwavering joy underneath everything because you're claiming this verse. Today I want to challenge you guys. I really believe that God can change your I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't get through this. I really believe that God can change it into an I can. And if you claim this next verse, and if you claim that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, if you claim that confidently, I know that God can really change the situation you're in, and he can do some big things. So we're going to hand out a piece of paper. It's just a blank piece of paper and some pens, and I really want you guys to write down whatever the thing you're always saying I can't is. So it might be, I can't do this parenting thing anymore, or I can't stay on top of my work-life balance. I can't get over this addiction. I can't sort my finances out. I can't be in this relationship anymore, or I can't go the next step with my faith of God because I'm scared of what people are going to think. Whatever it is, I want you to write that I can't down. And I want you to say, I can do whatever it is through all things, through Christ who strengthens me. So I want you guys to, write it down. Be real, be raw, be honest. This is not for us to read later. It's just a symbol of you guys handing it over to God, saying, I can do all things because of Christ who strengthens me. I want you to write it down and then come pin it on one of these nails here, fold it in half and pin it on this. And it's just a symbol of you handing it over to God. So Paul wraps up his letter and he says to the Philippians his last thing, and he says, thanks. And he says thanks to them for providing for all his needs and for this gift of generosity. And it wasn't that he needed anything, but he was thanking them for sharing their joy and sharing in what they had. Wouldn't it be awesome if we were known for a church that shared what we had, and we shared this joy in such a way that it was infectious and it was spread to everyone, and not just in this building, but if it was spread in our whole community and the ripple effect started of this joy movement. Whatever you have, you might be a great cook and have this secret recipe like KFC, or you might have space in your house to host people, or you're great at the barbecue, or maybe you're just really good at writing cards and words of encouragement, or maybe you're funny and you're really good at making people laugh. I just want to encourage you guys that whatever you have, share your joy. Don't keep it to yourself, because the whole thing of joy is it's better shared. I just pray that you guys become so joyful in knowing that you have the peace of God and knowing that God's got your back, that you can't help but let it overflow. Let's just pray. God, I just want to thank you for always providing for us, and thank you that no matter what chaos and circumstances we find ourselves in the middle of the mess, if we've stuffed up or if things have happened to us, whatever it is, you say, hey, I can still offer you that peace if you just come to me and ask. If you just pass it on to you, you've got it under control, and we thank you for that. And we thank you that we can have joy in all things and that we can have strength because of you in our lives. And I just pray that you be with us now. Help us to remember this series. Help us to remember to share our joy as well. And I just ask that you continue to be with us the rest of the day and, just work in our hearts as well. Amen.